Big day, man. Big day. We're in the middle. This is
How many hours of sleep did you get?
Oh, none at all. I had my son, who's like a total political wonk, was in my earbud, as I was falling asleep, giving me up to. How about you?
Play by play. I had to go for 1 hour run, and I listened to James Altucher's episode on, I think, 13 things that real leaders do when their candidate potentially loses. So which could go either way. But so that took like about an hour.
It's like one potential tragedy to another. This is like we did a total shot of digital health this week.
Speaking of, I'm gonna pour myself a little vermouth, Spanish style. So I'm gonna get that done.
Here we go. This is definitely a day. This is definitely
getting into it. So funny enough, I saw Jessica DaMassa tweet something. I think it was yesterday. Was the International Stress Awareness Day. Out of all days, that's the day that was chosen, right? So first of all, cheers.
Cheers to getting through the trauma.
And then I appropriately decided to wear, I just spoke at some European Space Agency event. It's like a combination of space and intelligent health. Right. That was fun. And I don't know if you can read this t-shirt, but it says, NASA, let's get the hell out of here. That's how I feel today.
Right. Yeah, I think we got a superstar this week, though. He's gonna kind of energize us all.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. Very difficult to schedule. Actually, at the end of the day, it was pretty easy. We planned it way ahead, unlike everything else that we don't plan ahead.
Right.
So I'm gonna invite in a person who can actually explain us quite a lot. I know you said you have a financial background, but this gentleman is actually an accountant and a lawyer by training. That's my understanding. Right. And I'm gonna let him in.
And so we'll let him. Hey, Lee.
Wait.
Hello.
Wait for it.
Yeah, we there?
You're there. Oh, we're not. Oh, now it's much better.
Good. Hi. How are you?
Nice to meet you, Lee.
Nice to meet you too, James.
So, Lee, I know when we exchanged, we still don't know the answer. And, I don't know if you've seen any of the previous episodes at all, but we had, and I know you're going to raise the thing, but it basically was a COVID-free room for us. So every week, Jim and I get our just conversations, go a little crazy with our guests, just have fun. And we have this like C19 little sign that you're not supposed to mention that word. And Jim, I didn't say this, but maybe this should be election-free zone too, and just focus on fun stuff.
I vote for election-free. I don't know, Lee, if you're up for that. No election.
COVID-free, election-free.
Right.
What else do we talk about, right? But let's maybe start with you. So I just very briefly, Lee, introduced you like that you actually have accounting and law degree, and like
I'm the most boring person you'd ever meet. I'm an accountant and a lawyer. How boring can that be?
Yeah, it's right. My dad, who like a lot of us is my hero, he was an accountant and then became a stockbroker, but he went back to law school with 6 kids and got his law degree. And I watch him and my mother later on in life, so anyways, a law degree. I don't think it's boring.
Well, he's a pretty amazing guy, but he probably needed the law degree to win arguments at home with 6 kids.
Right. 100%.
So I often say, though, Eugene, that I'm a recovering lawyer. I haven't practiced in a long, long time.
Right.
So I used the term recovering when I was in a startup and I came to a big buyer. I said I'm a recovering entrepreneur. And then now that I'm out of big company and back into the startup, I say I'm a recovering executive. So we're always recovering from something, right?
That's right.
But I know that lots of people ask you lots of questions around Livongo. I think Jim and I we are meticulously unproduced, but we're gonna go a little bit different route today. So first of all, I know some of your partners in crime, in very positive crime, that is, generated a SPAC or created a SPAC. And for, I think, ourselves and our viewers, maybe you can explain to us what is a SPAC and what's
so actually, some people say potato, some people say potato, some people say SPAC, and some people say SPAC, I guess. I think of Spock as Captain Spock from Star Trek.
Right.
But an SPAC is a special purpose acquisition corporation. It's money that's raised by founders in a public market to essentially have a pool of capital with a limited time frame. It's 2 years to find a company to acquire using the capital that was raised and also typically some additional capital in debt. And then that's a way for a company to essentially merge into this acquisition vehicle and become a public company. So you may have seen recently, Social Capital's founder did this with a Medicare Advantage plan called Clover Health. It's being used by other companies to essentially find a path to get public and to do that. What ends up happening is that the sponsors, and you alluded to one that my longtime business partner, Glen Tullman, is on the board of. A sponsor, in his case, is a General Catalyst. So they're a venture growth equity fund. They're raising money using this SPAC. Glen is going on the board. Dr. Jennifer Schneider from Livongo is also going on the board. And what they'll do is over the course of the next 2 years, find interesting companies within the thesis of that acquisition company to find. And then oftentimes, there you go, Hemant's book. And one new one.
I think the thesis is in there, right?
That's right, with Dr. Steve Klasko. What they'll do is the sponsors will oftentimes leave the running of the public company to the management team of the company that's acquired.
Right.
And they just become shareholders of that merged entity. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, super helpful. I mean, I look at this, I think one of the challenges, not every, and building healthcare companies like Eugene and I are doing, and like what you've done many times, is patient capital, right? Like I remember talking to Rob, your partner, about strategy with Livongo and going public, and it was really, we didn't think we would see a company go public that quickly, and but it's this idea that, like, I don't think can you build a digital health company in 7 or 10 years? This idea of like patient capital. Do you think these SPACs, like, how are you feeling about them? Regardless of the one you might, your partner's in, but how do you feel about them in terms of building out the digital health ecosystem? Positive, excited?
Well, I think that, I think that what occurs is that there are companies that are the appropriate size as a merger partner for a SPAC. And those are typically companies that already have meaningful revenue and cash flow, because to the extent that the SPAC takes on debt, it's going to need cash to service the debt payments and the interest payments on the debt that it raises. So many early stage digital health companies are still in growth mode. They don't have enough revenue or cash flow to be able to be a good candidate for that.
Right.
So you've seen some companies that fit that realm. Now, where the company has some buzz around it, where it's able to raise sufficient capital to provide for debt service in the form of equity, there might be an opportunity to take a good company, put it into a SPAC, then down the road, that new public company could roll up other companies. But, as you see with regard to some of the companies that went public, whether it was Livongo or Health Catalyst or Phreesia, all of us kind of went public in the summer of 2019. We did so on the base of relatively strong revenue, and a business model that gave investors line of sight to when we'd become profitable and start to generate cash flow. We
Right.
were not profitable and generating cash flow at the time that we went public, but investors had the foresight to believe in the future of the business.
Right.
You know, first of all, I need to get used to saying SPAC because I just got ingrained in my head SPAC, and
He's been saying SPAC. Lee. He's the only one that says SPAC.
Yeah, tomato. But
beam me up, Eugene. Beam me up.
Hey, with technology, I think we can do almost anything these days.
Yeah, SPAC is better. It sounds better. A spatula, like a SPAC. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's like speeding things up. I don't know. We can go crazy with this, but we actually had a discussion, Jim and I think even with Mr. Garber at some point. But there's many venture capital firms out there, right? And they range pretty widely on thesis and how they approach. But as entrepreneurs here on with you, we find the best partners, right? Because at the end of the day, it is a partnership to go and build a company or build a market or build a product and roll it in. You want partners in your company that are willing to build with you. And so like our kind of thesis is the best VCs are builders. So maybe like I would just, I would love to have your thoughts on Sevenwire thesis, on our hypothesis of building together versus, hey, it's capital, great. We know what the hell we're doing. We'll have board meetings.
Well, and so since you told me to be prepared to go a little bit crazy and not be scripted, and Eugene, you've lived all over the world. Jim, I'm not sure about whether you've had the same experience, but are you familiar with an organization called House Harriers?
No. Hash House.
So if I'm remembering, I'm pretty sure I have the name right.
Sounds like an Amsterdam kind of place.
So
I was in Amsterdam in my head.
As individuals were assigned to the British Foreign Service, and they'd be stationed in the vast parts of what was then the British Empire, whether they were in Hong Kong or in India or somewhere in the South Pacific, Australia and the like. In order to kind of get to know the community, there would be this group of folks that would go out for a run. And individuals who already were stationed there would map a course with chalk. And your job as the group that was running was to figure out what were the true markers and what were the false markers. Okay. So sometimes the markings might lead you to a department store. Sometimes the markers might lead you to a brothel. You were learning the city, okay, and where to go, where not to go. And then if you followed the correct markings, you'd end up at a pub. Okay. And so this group calls themselves a drinking club with a running problem. Right. And so when you think about what we do at Sevenwire, we are entrepreneurs with an investing problem. In other words, we didn't set out when Glen and Tullman, my co-founder, and I started investing together 25 years or so ago. We did it with the idea that we would invest in and help build companies. And we'd work with entrepreneurs. In fact, one of the criteria for making an investment is to find founders who will tolerate us, because like we aren't the kind who just write a check and say, we'll see you at a quarterly board meeting. Like we're really interested in your business and we want to be very much involved, and oftentimes get involved to the point where we're helping you recruit people to the team. We may take roles on the team for a period of time in business development. We're on sales calls. We won't invest in something if we don't believe that we can sell it ourselves, like that. Literally, we'd be the ones to go out and sell. And as you mentioned, when you're building a company, probably the key element, at least that we focus on, is the team, because you recognize that the world changes, certainly, hopefully not as rapidly as it had in the past 6 to 9 months due to, hold the sign up, Jim. Hold the sign up.
We get it ready.
I can't say it, but you've got the sign. And so, but things change and you have to pivot. And so we get to know the founding team, we get to know the people who are there. Like there's going to be needs to pivot. There's going to be change that comes at you from all sides, and you're going to have to evolve your business over time and really find the right place to go. And so we spend a lot of time with founders and act as founders. And because we've built dozens of companies now over the course of our career, that we're at a stage where we see companies that are interesting to us that we want to get involved in helping to grow. And so that's a little bit of a different approach. We aren't doing this. We have a fund. Our first connected consumer fund was 100 million. We've raised more than half of our next connected consumer fund. It'll likely be capped at, again, 100, 150 million tops. We're not looking to raise hundreds of $millions of capital because that just puts pressure on you to get it deployed quickly, to kind of make sure that you're delivering good internal rates of return. And at the end of the day, all you're doing is you're spraying and praying, right? You're just putting cash out. We put limited amount of capital into limited amount of companies that we can focus on individually. And so that's a little bit different in terms of our approach.
It's interesting, right? Because I think, sorry, Jim, go ahead, man.
No, I have to go segue because I need to talk about your running and meditation. So this is, I was listening, or Eugene told me to listen to one of your podcasts. One of the things you've done. So during this time, I won't put up the sign. During this time,
we do prepare a little bit. I mean, I know it's meticulously unproduced.
No, but we did a whole phenomenal. Does he know? Who did we have on that talked about going to Peru?
Kristin Milburn.
Kristin talking about going to Peru and meditation.
Ayahuasca. Yeah.
Ayahuasca.
Okay. Yeah.
So we got really happy. But okay, in running startups and running public companies, so I saw you. So you're big into health. I think into meditation you were mentioning, and we had someone come in and talk to about that. Have you found during this time period, are you able to maintain all that practices, or are you stressed by what's going on, or
so look, part of my daily routine has always been I wake up, I look to see what texts or emails I have from Glen, because typically he's working into the wee hours of the morning, and so
does the guy ever sleep?
No, he does not sleep. He doesn't need to sleep, and he doesn't sleep, although I have great pictures of him with his head on his keyboard, sleeping on planes and offices and other places we've been. But my typical day starts with kind of getting on, seeing what's come in overnight, doing a bit of work. Then after that's cleared, and kind of clearing my head in terms of the things I have to get done for the morning that are pressing, kind of a short meditation, workout, and then come back, stretch, shower, and dig in. And most mornings, that occurs pretty early. And then, I'm able to kind of get into my day. But I think that maintaining kind of a routine, especially, if you're working from home, you've got kind of all other kinds of distractions going on, that having that type of routine is important, at least for me, in terms of being able to sustain the level of focus that I want to have on what it is we're doing.
Yeah.
My routine every Wednesday is to have a little alcohol. So cheers to the meditation. I went, barely got any sleep, woke up this morning to some numbers, went to take the blue wave picture at the ocean here in Barcelona. That's the only blue wave that I saw, and ran for about an hour. And then this is my routine. So,
and I actually think, like, we might not know this, Lee, but you kind of owe us a little bit of a favor here, because we had a bit of an intervention with Rob on one of the first episodes, when at the beginning of the whole thing, and he had a long beard. This whole podcast started up as an intervention with me, with Eugene, because he was feeling a little bit the pressure of not being able to get on planes and meet all his buddies at conferences and do all that stuff. And then we had the same thing with Rob. We saw Rob. I was texting Rob. I was texting you.
Wait, first of all, why are you like only pushing it on me? You were missing that too, Jim. Like,
yeah, no, he saved me. He saved me a couple of weeks ago. I started dipping.
So each other out.
It's hard. I mean, this is at least for me, it's a relationship business, a people business, and
yeah,
you know, we often talk about the fact that every day we wake up and we feel the urgency of needing to help change healthcare and working with people who are like-minded. And so much of the time, I mean, you know, have global services status on United. I'm a 3 million miler on American. I fly based on the schedule of what's available. And this is the longest time in my entire professional career that I've been on the ground this long, and frankly, not able to see people other than through this type of medium. So
how's family
it's good
feeling
to stay
about that?
connected. And we've been doing a good job, I think, of trying to stay connected in virtual conferences and like, but it's just not the same as the serendipity that occurs when you bump into people in the hallway at a conference, or you happen to see each other in an airport. Like, good things happen when you kind of have those unplanned collisions.
Right.
So I find myself doing even, I would say almost more. So Lee, for your knowledge, I know Jim knows this, but I do these like serendipity calls. So any LinkedIn requests, I have like a templated response of what I can learn or how I can help. I found myself through this process actually doing many more of those serendipity calls because to your point, I mean, a lot of these planes and serendipity events are just not there. And I think it's so important to kind of keep out there. It's so we talked about meditation and running and, you know, the C word, and maybe just, you know, as you talked about the thesis, and I agree. I mean, it is all about people, but also markets, right? And changing markets. I think, you know, what happened in the last, let's call it 7, 8, 9 months, has certainly spearheaded quite a lot of what we as a community have been pushing and doing. As a partner at Sevenwire, what are some of the entrepreneur opportunities, right? Like where are you guys seeing some of the opportunities in the market? Just maybe dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah, so we have a relatively narrow focus, and I think part of it comes from the fact that Robert and Glen and I have been involved in healthcare information technology for a long time and worked on a number of companies in the space. And our belief is that the trajectory of healthcare is not sustainable from a cost standpoint. We have to get away from a fee-for-service model and really move to fee-for-value, because too often, if Jim and I, let's say, each have the same condition and we see the same doctor, he recovers more quickly. He's a lousy customer as far as that doctor's concerned, right? If I need more services, more office visits, more tests, like I'm a revenue center. But when you get into fee for value, now if there's one payment that's the same for all three of us, and you're capitated with some risk around the cost of care, you're going to make sure that someone stays healthy after they leave your office. And you're going to look at ways to sustain someone's pathway towards health. I don't think any of us want to be patients, but we all want to be healthy. And so what can we do to support that? So our swim lanes at Sevenwire have been focused on the consumer side of that equation. After building companies in practice management, electronic health records, and scheduling and billing, like we don't need more of those systems to do what needs to be done, but to create a system that is connected and informing consumers about their health. That's something that we need if we're ever going to achieve the type of fee-for-value system that we deserve. And so the swim lanes that we have are around chronic care. Livongo is a great example of that. We have another company in the portfolio that is the company formerly known as Clarify Health, rebranding as Zurigo, that is focused on helping individuals with skin conditions to use UV light therapy at home. Much more convenient, far easier than going and sitting at a doctor's office multiple times a week, far less costly to the system to do it at home, and also extremely, extremely better for the patient if they can avoid taking some of the biologics that are prescribed at a massive cost to the system, because oftentimes UV light therapy isn't available. So we focus on kind of helping people with chronic conditions. We'll look at frail elder populations that have significant needs that change sometimes rapidly over time. And so what can we be doing to help individuals that are kind of at a certain stage of life? You can see 70 to 95-year-old as a massively growing market globally as we're living longer. But that doesn't mean that we're staying healthy as long, because we're keeping people alive with conditions that we need to find ways to treat and
And much more digitally savvy, believe it or not, right? Like,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But, I don't know, my parents have both passed, but I wouldn't want to put either of them into an assisted living or a nursing home. Not now. If I could avoid it, I'd do as much as I could for them at home. And so we have a company called Home Thrive that's focused there. We think about episodic conditions, certain acute conditions. Let's say it might be cardiac rehab after a stroke, or prehab and rehab around musculoskeletal events. And so that's another swim lane for us. We're thinking a lot about personalized medicine. And it's not for us about the pill. It's about how do we, now genomic tests are so inexpensive. You can sequence your whole exome for less than $1,000. What do you do with that information? Like, you've got,
how do you make it actionable?
How do you make it actionable? Like, you have now, you've determined that you've got a 10% chance of getting something really terrible.
Right.
Well, do you let that run your life, or how do you address that?
I found Marina makes fun of me because in my analysis, I have higher percentage chance for restless leg syndrome. So apparently I may kick her one day. I don't know, but
you're gonna say resting bitch.
But what do I do about that? Tie my legs at night? I don't know.
Yeah, but you might have to sleep in another room. Marina might talk to you about that. So those are some of the swim lanes that we look at from a business perspective, and we also look. I'd say another kind of screen for us is we're very focused on now meeting some of the commitments that we want to make, not only for our own team in terms of adding diversity to our partnership rank. I think you saw, Eugene, recently, Alyssa Jaffee, who you've met, was named a partner of the fund. But we also are looking at female and diverse founders. And we have one great company, Consejo Sano, founded by Abner Mason, who also is the founder of Health Tech for Medicaid. And he's terrific, but we're trying to find actively ways to support.
And I just saw something flash. They did just a great deal just recently, right? I just saw something, yeah.
And do you find the thing that I've noticed, like even listening to you for a few minutes and talking to Rob lots of times and listening to Glen, is this like clarity of thinking? Like if you talk to you guys, the way you communicate, like two questions kind of coming to my mind at the same time is when you're working with young founders, like, so you guys are great communicators. Like when you're kind of bringing, because you kind of go in Series A, Series A level in some deals, right. So could be pretty early into a founding team. Do they have to be able to communicate with the clarity that you guys have when you think about conceiving of these markets and talk to it? Or do you help them kind of along that path? Or how do you think about that? Do you find sometimes that you guys have been through it so many times at this stage that, you're playing over here and these guys just need to kind of go through their natural learning process?
Well, some founders are much better, irrespective of age. Some founders are much better at communicating the vision that they have than others. I think part of what we do in working with founders is to probe with them their purpose, their sense of mission around what it is they're doing, and to help them better share that with not only other investors, but with clients, prospective clients, and whoever it is that they're serving. So we oftentimes will work with founding teams all around getting that message refined, encapsulating it in a presentation, literally videotaping them, doing the presentation, having them watch it, and then highlighting things for them that they're doing. We find that to be a really effective way in terms of helping someone understand. I can say, well, Jim, when you spoke about X, Y, and Z, no, I didn't do that, or I didn't. Like I couldn't have possibly stammered over that. This is what I said. Well, let's watch the outtakes.
Evidence.
The evidence. And so it really is helpful to be able to do that with someone. We do that with salespeople for the companies we work with. Okay. Come on in on a Saturday. We're going to meet with 6 of you. You're going to give your pitch. We're videotaping you. You need to do it in 10 minutes, kind of the Q&A. And then now let's talk about, what could you have done differently to maybe get the message across better?
Right. Because that's what I felt like with Livongo was like the clarity of message. Like I listened to the message and how you took this kind of fairly complex system at the end of the day, meaning if you're trying to help someone, with diabetes or metabolic condition, and you're doing lots of things to help them and support them, and you're dealing with maybe how that stuff is getting paid for, it's very quickly very complex. But when you would hear the message would be quite simple. And I know we've talked a lot about that, Eugene, how that's it feels like it's maybe kind of core.
Yeah, it is. I mean, very much so. And one other thing, just to mention, when you think about kind of having vision and clarity of purpose, oftentimes entrepreneurs will come forward and they'll say, well, we think this is a great idea because health plans, I'll just use that as an example, or a pharma company, they really need this. And so they have a whole page in their deck saying, here's all the exit candidates. Like, you have to question someone's commitment to what it is they're doing if they're already thinking about exit. And so we, will often, maybe for dramatic purposes, look at the deck, take that page out, tear it up into little pieces and say, are you committed to building a company? Or are you building something to sell? Because that's a product idea. That's not a company.
I thought you were going to go a different route. I just heard some good friend of mine, Greg Larkin. He came out of Bloomberg and wrote a book about kind of corporate disruption. But I heard him on a podcast and he said, never sell ideas, sell outcomes, right? So I kind of thought, Lee, you were going to go there, but this is also a great point on that.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, what's the impact you're trying to have in the world, right? It's not, it's not just this product. Just because you can build something doesn't mean that the world needs it. Like, what is it that you're going to prove with it, and how is it going to make lives different? That's where I think also you see founders. We have a great young founder. He may be our youngest founder in the portfolio, Stephen Smith from NOCD.
NOCD, yeah.
He went through hell and back getting his OCD diagnosed, and he vowed never to let anybody else go through the same hell that he did. And so his passion around what it is he's doing is absolutely contagious. So not only does he have a team who's really supportive of the mission, but when he's out talking to health plans, when he's been working with providers, when they get patients engaged with this condition and they start working with members, it's really something that he takes so seriously because it's something that he's had to address in his own life.
Well, I've always said this, and this is like as when I entered health and care industry, right? For me, it's most rewarding industry because we all have experiences, and you hear the founders, and Marina and I laugh about this. Sometimes we literally hear this pitch, telling a story that my cousin's brother's mother experienced this, right? or and it's you can almost tell that those are the founders that are just looking for an exit. They're not building this to scale. They're not building this for outcomes. They, you know, it's a story that you hear. So I think a lot of the founders in the healthcare space actually lived and breathed this every day, right? And there's a
Right.
reason, and there's always a story behind it.
Yeah. Well, you've heard Glenn talk about the experience with his son Sam when he was diagnosed at 8 years old with diabetes. And you know, when Sam looked up at him from the hospital bed and said, you know, Dad, you know, can you fix this? Like, you know, that's something that stayed with him. He said, yes, we can. And he's devoted, you know, half a lifetime towards making sure that that happens and finding ways for people with diabetes, but other chronic conditions to live better. And that was the foundation for Livongo.
It's a bit of it's kind of the superpower. If you think about even like your like health coach or, you know, our company, we deal with chronic conditions too, but it's kind of the superpower if you can tap into it where,
Great point.
You know, yeah, digital health or, you know, even health tech or whatever angle you're coming at it, you can just see it just gives you energy when maybe energy's not there, gives you enthusiasm. It helps you make the right decision, right? You know, you can see sometimes people put pressure on you to drive towards a different decision. It's kind of really easy sometimes to see what the right decision is when someone's on the other end of the, you know, the service, right?
Absolutely. No, it's
Speaking of
decisions.
Speaking of decisions, we're kind of approaching you know, I'm usually the timekeeper guy, but you know, talk about decisions. And this is, you know, honestly, the first time I met Glenn and then the first time I met you, Lee, I've been very much impressed on leadership styles. Like I remember having a dinner with Glenn and, you know, some nuggets, I still have it in my kind of digital notebook, like as points. So I think to the entrepreneurs, and I think you guys have built multiple companies. And of course, you know, everybody knows about Livongo lately, but maybe, I mean, tons of books written on leadership, but just kind of from your own perspective, what are some nuggets, right? What are some nuggets for entrepreneurs that are building companies on leadership? Just curious.
Well, we were talking about running earlier, and building a company is more like sprinting a marathon because it's a long journey, but you have to go fast, right? And you know, you oftentimes see a number of founders who are just so focused on getting it right that they let perfect be the enemy of the good. And what you need to do is focus on, you know, when can you kind of get to market and when can you release? It's amazing, amazing how oftentimes clients, if they see your passion, if they understand your purpose, are willing to work with you, even if things aren't necessarily perfect, but they know that you've got a vision that you're going to keep improving on. When we first started selling electronic health records, EHR was a 4-letter word. It's like doctors didn't want to deal with it. No one wanted to talk about it. It was terrible. Like you'd walk into an office and you'd be afraid that like, hey, you're going to change the way I practice. Like, give me a break. And so, you know, oftentimes you realize it's not about, Jim, you had mentioned this, you know, not about a product. It's about change management. It's about understanding what does this mean to the person I'm interacting with, and how is it going to be from their perspective. And when you put yourself in their shoes, you now have to understand, well, what's their motivation? And so ultimately, when you started thinking about, you know, a change like an electronic health record, you had to demonstrate that you were reducing medical errors, that you were going to allow them to provide better care for patients, that you were going to take knowledge that sometimes takes years. I think you both know new medical discoveries take 17 years to get into practice. How can you infuse knowledge and information into a process of taking care of patients? And that's what you take the Hippocratic oath to do. You want to do that. So tap into someone's purpose and align it with the vision that you have for the company you're building. And that's how you'll get customers that are not just a buyer, but they're a partner, they're a client. You want everyone to rave about what it is that you're providing them as an entrepreneur. And so to kind of generate that type of of fervor around what it is you're doing. You have to create believers out of people and get them to buy into your vision. And that takes not only the communication that we were speaking about earlier, but it takes some, I think, real soul searching for an entrepreneur to be able to go out to the market and say, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is who we're going to help. This is the outcome we're trying to achieve, Eugene, to the point you made earlier. And will you join with me on this mission? And that's not just for the people you hire. That's for the people who you're partnering with that are going to be your paying clients.
What do they say? Leaders don't exist without followers, right? So
Right. Drop the mic.
Yeah, boom.
Boom, kaboom.
So on that note, I mean, we can spend hours, Lee, honestly, but I know, your
we'll do it again. Let's
right.
find another time. We'll do it again.
We'll absolutely do it again. On that note, thank you for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button, because the only exit that we're looking for, Jim and I, is like the Joe Rogan style, podcast exit. So
we're at like about 900,000 subscribers short at the moment. So
hey, Jim, we got 142 subscribers to this channel now. We're beating out Matthew Holt on his other channels.
Oh, he likes that. He likes that.
No, look, when we rang a bell when we got to the first 100 users at Livongo. And so you've rung one bell, but you'll keep ringing bells. And thanks so much for inviting me to join you.
Exactly.
Yeah, great to